Hey there, class. This is Mr. Pritz. We're going to take a brief look at the genres of the New Testament letters. I call the epistles hybrids because while we will look at many different subgenres, no one epistle perfectly fits into any subgenre of a New Testament letter. I mean, we can call them letters, we can call them epistles, and that's sort of an overarching genre. But each epistle has within it many subgenres, and that's what we're going to look at today. So the first subgenre is called circular letters. This is a letter intended for circulation among a group of people. The salutation or the greeting is one signpost which signals the group that is envisioned. Remember that the world in which these letters were written were oral cultures, so these letters would have been passed around through a certain region, like the Romans or the Corinthians or the Thessalonians, and they would have been read at all the different church meetings throughout that region. That's what we mean by circular. They actually circulated. So these letters are they have a universality component. They have a sense that what we are reading applies to all Christians at all times. They exercise historical imagination. We must exercise historical imagination and picture ourselves as being present at a reading of an epistle. The issues discussed are likely to be of public concern, and they lay a foundation for the future of the church. Next, we have personal letters. A personal letter is a letter in which the writer shares a lot of personal information about himself or herself. So you might first think that a personal letter is a letter written to a specific person, but that actually falls into a different category. So by personal letter, we actually mean a letter that is personal in nature. The author is personally sharing information about him or herself. None of the New Testament's epistles is only a personal letter, but in some of them, the writer does share a large amount of personal information and personal feelings. Family letters. Family, personal, and friendship letters overlap greatly. They were prominent epistolary genres in the ancient world. So these letters are addressed to family, obviously. They contain family life as the content, family matters, certain things that are affecting the family relationships. The tone is familial. It's very emotional and affectionate. We see a lot of that in Paul's writing. Several epistles speak of the church under the metaphor of family. Therefore, those can fall under the family letters. Writers often refer to other Christians as brothers or sisters. It actually occurs approximately 125 times. So a family letter is a great example of a subgenre epistle. Friendship letters. They name the recipients either as individuals or a group. References to shared experiences, either past or present, as in when Paul might talk about visiting a church. Friendship is offered as the basis for a request. Expression of feelings that are part of a friendship. Statements of longing to be present with the recipients. That's very common in Paul's writings. And all of these are common in the epistles in the New Testament. Next, we have letter essays. So 2 New Testament letters fall decisively into this category, Romans and Hebrews. So Romans and Hebrews, they do have letter aspects, the salutation in the beginning, greeting at the end, conclusion at the end. But the body of these letters are largely theological exposition. Another way of saying a letter essay would be a didactic letter or a teaching letter. They're more theological in nature than personal, like a letter. And again, so a letter essay may have been a circular letter. It may have circulated around as Paul was fleshing out and exploring this Christian theology and trying to teach it to the churches as foundational for their communities and for their life. We have next administrative or official letters. So Rome was a highly governed and militarized society. Therefore, this category of letter was very prevalent during the first century church, not just within the church, but also without. All these letters that we're talking about are not only used within the church, but in the surrounding culture during the time. The apostles were spiritual officials in the church. Therefore, what they wrote carried absolute spiritual authority and still does to us. There is even within most traditions an apostolic succession. That is a tradition that is literally founded on the succeeding of the apostles' words in tradition. The pastoral epistles fit this category, 1st and 2nd Timothy and Titus. Paul is speaking to them as an elder, as someone that's above them, and they are subordinates, and they are to listen and to live out and embody what Paul is teaching them. And we have a missionary letter. Missionary letter bears the signs of having been written by a missionary. At least part of this letter is a report of missionary activity to recipients who are in some sense involved in the missionary's life and work. They may include report of travel plans. Example could be Philippians, can be read as a missionary update letter. Actually, several of Paul's letters are autobiographical and therefore fall under this category. As you've probably already noticed, Paul oftentimes will discuss his previous visits or his previous discussions with people and how they were walking in the way of the Lord, and then they had fallen away to the surrounding pagan culture. And so Paul would travel as a missionary, establish churches, and then he would get reports of how the churches were they were either continuing to follow the gospel or they were no longer following the gospel. And then he would send these letters, and that's the missionary letters, is him addressing them as the missionary who established their church. So that is all of the subgenres for the New Testament letters. I hope this helps you understand better the different aspects of the letters in the New Testament.